This is part 2 in our refresher series to cover the basic elements of good healthy habits across the board of different lifestyle things that we want to achieve. So today's video is about nutrition, and we're going to be talking about the simple habits and simple kind of things that you can kind of apply to your lifestyle and apply to your nutritional actions that will hopefully get you better results. So I'm going to blast through a list of things, and ultimately I want you to pick out 1 or 2 of these things to change this week. You might already be doing some of them, and that's fantastic, but if there's some that you've been missing out on, some that you've been kind of putting off for a while, I want you to really embrace that this week and focus yourself this week on getting that 1 or 2 things really nailed down and kind of sorted out into a good healthy habit that you can carry forward over the weeks, months and years. Okay, so the first on my list is to prepare in advance. If we aren't prepared, we are more likely to order takeaway, we're more likely to pick up sandwiches from the deli, and we're more likely just to eat what's in the house. And if we're in the habit of having things in the house that aren't quite up to scratch in terms of our kind of healthy standards, then we're going to be putting ourselves in a position where we're just eating on the fly rather than being mindful and thinking about it, okay? So if you can sit down with your partner, with your family, with your friends, whoever you eat with on a regular basis, sit down with them, map out a plan. You don't have to stick to the plan like glue, but just having a plan in your mind and doing the shopping so that you've got the food in the house, that is the first step toward being able to prepare and cook healthy meals for everybody in the family. And if you all sit down together, then there'll be less arguments and less battles to get everyone to eat, because you should have all agreed in advance on what you would all enjoy eating together, okay? So preparing in advance and getting the shopping done so that the food is in the house, that is hurdle number 1. Okay, cooking at home. The more you can prepare food in your own house, the more you can eat at home, the more likely it is that you will remain in control of the food that you are eating. If you're eating out all the time, you're putting the control into someone else's hands. And ultimately, yes, you can make a good, healthy choice when you're eating out, and that is your prerogative, but you're still kind of at the mercy of what they choose to put into the food, okay? So eating out is not a bad thing inherently, but if we're doing it all the time, if we're doing it multiple times per week, we've got to be aware that we're kind of taking the control away from ourselves and putting it into someone else's hands. As much as humanly possible, keep the control within your own hands and cook and prep food in your own house. And then at least you've got the control, kind of to the highest degree that is possible in the given week, in the given day. Okay, so preparing in advance and cooking at home, they're my first 2. The next one, when the food is on your plate, I want you to take it really slowly. I am in a habit of kind of gagging my food down, shoving it into my face because I'm always so hungry. One of the things I have to force myself to do is to sit down, take a few breaths, calm my digestive system down, prepare my kind of rest and digest system with some nice deep belly breaths, and then eat really slowly, okay? Eat slowly, eat mindfully. Don't put the TV on, don't have your phone playing YouTube, don't kind of be distracted when you're eating as much as possible. Obviously, if you've got kids, it's not always possible to do that. But when it is possible, try and sit down in a quiet environment, kind of relaxed and calm, deep breaths, prepare yourself, and make sure you've got the time and space to eat mindfully. What you will find is that you'll have a better sense of when you are actually getting full, and you might end up eating slightly less because you actually recognize that point of fullness rather than just blasting past it in a hurry to get all the food off your plate into your mouth, okay? So eating slowly. The next thing on my list is to be accountable. I know for sure, in terms of my own kind of accountability, that when I track my food, either when I write it down or when I use MyFitnessPal to log my macros and my calories, I am so much more responsible for my choices than I am when I don't track, okay? It's something that can become a bit of a reliance over time, but if you know more or less after a certain amount of tracking what is in your food, you will find that over time you will start to make more consciously healthier and smarter choices because you will have that accountability in the back of your mind. I know that over time I've learned kind of what on a plate or in a packet or in a portion, I know what my body needs, what my appetite needs, and what I need at a certain time. So if I wanted to, I could come off the tracking and I probably wouldn't need it anymore. But I like the accountability of having that. I like knowing that I have that kind of backup set telling me, okay, you've got this much left for the day, or you've gone over by this much, so maybe I might make adjustments for the next day. So having that accountability really helps to keep me in line, and it's just an extra kind of thing in the back of my mind, just keeping me on track, knowing that I'm not kind of blasting through my calories for the day and not overdoing it or underdoing it, as can be the case. Okay, so that's the next thing on the list. So the first one was prep in advance. Number 2 was cooking at home as much as possible. Number 3 was rest and digest. Number 4 is be accountable. Okay. Number 5 on my list is to kind of make sure that you eat enough. You have a sufficient portion at the first meal or the previous meal to get you through the next 3, 4, or 5 hours. We need to allow these periods in between our eating or feeding times where we allow our system to rest and digest and get ready again for the next meal. If we don't allow this, if we're grazing all day, we're constantly in this state of kind of constantly digesting and constantly on the go, and our body doesn't have the time to rest and settle down and renew the appetite ready for the next system. Okay, we need that time to allow all the systems to kind of settle down, kind of calm itself off, and then the appetite will start to drive again. We've got this hormonal pattern and this biological pattern that needs to happen in between the meals, so let's let that happen and let ourselves have a break from taking calories in. Okay, so aiming for a minimum of 3 hours in between feeds, anything up to sort of 5 or 6 hours depending on your individual tolerance. I personally find that kind of 5 hours is about my limit for getting hungry but not getting so hungry that I then want to go and eat everything in sight. Okay, so you need to experiment with that for yourself and work out what your gap needs to be. Sometimes it's dictated to you by your schedule, and that's fine if that's the case, but essentially you want to be making sure that you're actually having an appetite before you dive into your next meal, rather than just eating on a schedule because that's what you've always done. Okay, so start to question the things that you've always done and start to just kind of have the idea of making some changes. You might percolate on these ideas for a few days or weeks, but just get that into your mind that is a good thing to do, having these little fasting periods in between your feeding. Okay, when you are preparing your plate, if you imagine the circular plate or a square plate, if you have square plates, then always try and fill your plate up with vegetables first. So at least half the plate, fill it with vegetables, and then put your palm size or your hand size of protein on your plate, and then you've got the rest of the space for a small portion of carbohydrates. So making sure that essentially we're using the meal builder to build the meals whenever it's kind of visually possible, and when it's not visually possible, to make it exactly as we kind of the idea is, that kind of palm size, fist size, etc. Just try and use your best estimate to do that, so that we're getting the right ratio of nutrients that are going into your body. We all need a slightly different ratio, and that's where we have to personalize it. But if you can get the foundation of meal building sorted out, then we can build on that with a better kind of approach and individualizing it to suit your own needs. Okay, so getting the veg first, then the protein, making sure that you've got some healthy fats in there too, and then a good portion of carbohydrates to finish off. Okay. One of the things that I think we can do with carbohydrates, they tend to be these highly palatable foods that we want to keep eating more and more of. I always say, when you kind of get this kind of sense, this feeling of carbohydrates, if we've been eating a lot of highly palatable foods over Christmas, it's probably best if we can spend the next couple of weeks trying to desensitize our taste system and move away from these highly palatable foods just for a while, so that we can get our level back onto a level playing field. So if we've been eating loads of kind of high fat, high carb foods, we want to bring it back to more vegetable based and kind of plain protein, so that we can desensitize our tongue, our brain, so that we're not getting this kind of high reward system in our foods, which essentially makes us eat more and more and more. It's like once you pop, you can't stop kind of feeling. You just want to keep eating. So if you can start to kind of make your foods a bit more bland, just temporarily until you've leveled off your the sensation that you're getting when you're eating, that will mean that you kind of reset your level of where your tolerance is for these highly palatable types of food, which means that the next time you eat them, you won't be getting that kind of drive to really eat more and more and more and more, okay? So kind of steaming your vegetables rather than frying them, and the same with meats and that sort of thing, baking it instead of frying, and just making sure that we're kind of bringing the food reward down a little bit until we've got that level playing field back, okay? I'm not saying make your food boring forever, just make it a little bit less rewarding for now, and then you can bring the tastier foods back in when you've reset your system, okay? And then the last thing on my list is to try and aim to make one meal of the day carbohydrate free if you can, okay? This is not an essential thing, it's just something I quite like to do. If I've had porridge for my breakfast, for example, I might try and make my lunch a bit lower carb or no carb, and then I've got a good portion of carbs with my dinner. So I'm just giving my system a break when it comes to carbohydrates and focusing on the more satiating nutrients like the proteins and the fats, and filling up on vegetables at lunchtime as well, okay? So they're the main ideas: prepping in advance, getting organized, shopping, cooking at home, eating slowly, being accountable as much as possible, having that kind of block of period in between your meals, 3 to 5 hours to rest and digest, vegetables first, protein second, healthy fats third, carbohydrates at the end if you want to, and then basically having one meal carbohydrate free if that feels like the right thing to do for you. That might not be right for you, and that's okay, but that's what I like to do. I don't do it every day, just on certain days when I'm feeling like I might have overdone the carbs maybe the day before, or if I've got a big carbohydrate day coming up, I might go one meal carb free just to kind of give my body a bit of a rest and a break, okay? So they are the main principles I want you to focus on for now. Remember what I said at the beginning: pick out 1 or 2 things, focus on those things, and make sure you get your head in the game, nail the habit before you move on to the next habit, so that you can start to create a good healthy foundation of good habits to lead you through the new year. Okay, thanks for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.